All right, so sinking the Lusitania. We're going to talk about unrestricted submarine warfare today, and we're going to go over this in the notes about the Lusitania and how this was a step closer for the United States entering the war. When did the war start? What year? When did the war start? You can find it in the room here if you just look around. Go ahead, Griffin. Yeah, 1914. Good job. Good job. So 1914. And when did the sinking of Lusitania happen? When did it occur? 1915. Yeah, good job. Good job. And why was it so significant? Why was it impactful? Why did this tie in the United States somehow? Go ahead, Noel. Yeah, yeah, good job. Good job. So this was a passenger ship, and this was pretty much coming from, really the United States over to England, right? There's a connection there, and the passengers on the ship, right, 128 of them, American citizens, they died. And this was something that Woodrow Wilson had to think of. It's like, oh, what are we going to do from here? Are we going to get involved? Are we going to try to outlash against Germany here already, just a year into the war? Well, we'll see. We'll see. But with the Lusitania, this sinking was just, again, pushing the United States ever closer to war. And Wilson, like I mentioned before, had to make a tough decision. What side were they going to join? And with the Lusitania sinking, this was, again, pushing the U.S. closer and closer to getting involved. So number one, when and where did Lusitania leave from? Where is Lusitania going? What do we have here? Gabe, what do you have?
It left from New York one Vancouver and was headed to Liverpool.
Yeah, yeah, good job. So Liverpool in England, and this was strange, right? Why would they have a passenger ship going across the Atlantic Ocean during wartime? Right? I think you're just asking for some sort of, some sort of retaliation from Germany. And to say that this event could have been, who knows, avoided, probably, right? I don't think it's smart just to be out in the open waters, especially during this new war where there's submarines, there's dreadnoughts, these new forms of battleships. And we all know that Germany is going to try to cut off Great Britain from their supplies, which we'll mention today with unrestricted submarine warfare. So again, maybe not a good idea to be just traveling around the Atlantic. Number two, what was the other name of Lusitania? Why was Lusitania called this? What do we have for this one? No, go ahead. The Greyhound. Yeah, the Greyhound of the seas, right? And what do we know about a Greyhound? Are they fast? Yeah, they're really fast. So that's kind of why they called it the Greyhound of the sea, just because it can maneuver and move at very fast speeds. And if you're going to be out in the open water during wartime with these U-boats everywhere, you want to be going pretty fast. All right, good. Good job. Number three, describe how the Lusitania sunk. Why didn't the what didn't the Lusitania do? Kara, what do you have for three? Yep. Yeah, good job. Good job. So we'll talk about this when we get to the Atlantic Fleet. And a little bit today, we'll mention it. These boats had to pretty much sail in zigzags to try to avoid any type of targeting from torpedoes or submarines. With these submarines, it was hard to aim many of their torpedoes or forms of weaponry at ships that are sailing at fast speeds. So to try to avoid really taking on a hit, you just sail in zigzag motion and try to avoid the submarine from targeting them easily. All right, good. Good job. It's almost like running away from a crocodile. The best way to do it is running in zigzags because they have those short little stumpy arms. I don't know. I was just watching Jeff Kerwin not too long ago, and Steve Irwin. Man, that's what their saying was. What's that? Yeah, yeah, or just run faster than who's next to you. Four. What was the name of the submarine that sank the Lusitania? What was the name of the submarine's captain? This is getting in detail of the reading here. What do we have here? No, go ahead. Schweitzer, yeah. Yep, good job. Good job. And again, just making sure you're reading that article. So that's why that question was in there in detail. 5, how long did it take for the submarine to sink? How many people died from the event? How many people died from? Oh, Americans died from the event. There you go. I think I should be say Lusitania. I don't know why I have that. What do you have here, Sarah? Yeah, good job. Good job. So close to 1,198 people and 138, 128 Americans. Good job. So that number's kind of off every now and then, depending on what article, what source you read. Good job. Six, why was a controversy over the second explosion on the Lusitania? Eddie, what do you have for six?
Argument over whether the ship was a legitimate target. Both sides made misleading claims about the ship. At the time she was carrying over 4 million small arms ammunition.
Yeah, good job. Good job. Good work. So with unrestricted submarine warfare, this is a decision by Germany to, really get involved in this military policy with taking out any type of supplies coming from, let's say, America or their imperialized colonies. And this policy was really all over the place. So with many of the sinkings of some of these passenger ships, Germany was kind of off and on with this policy. And it's to a point where you couldn't really trust what they're going to do. And with these submarines, I mean, it was really hard to send messages back and forth clearly across the Atlantic Ocean. At that time, they didn't have the capabilities of communicating, far distances. So many of these submarines, many of these captains on these U-boats, these German captains, they were just taking out ships as they were ordered from really the beginning of the war. And it didn't really matter if they're a passenger ship, a supply ship, if they're really with, maybe it might be a passenger ship, but below the deck, they might have had a lot of supplies and war armaments. So again, Germans really had no clue to see exactly who the enemy was or if it was an actual passenger ship. So this was really tough for them to do. And a lot of times when these submarines would come up to the boats, they would actually emerge from the water and direct some of the passengers to get off the boat, pretty much getting these passenger or these lifeboats to escape the sinking because they're like, oh, we just want to avoid this. We want to make sure that we warn you before we really take out the ship. And with these lifeboats, if you're stuck out in the middle of the Atlantic, chances are you're probably going to die because this is a really far distance to travel in, let's say, a paddle boat. So, again, pretty difficult stuff here. All right, good job, good job. Is there any questions on that reading? I'll have those answers in. I'll have those grades in as soon as possible. All right, we're gonna watch a video on this, but I don't know how I can do that with recording purposes. Maybe we'll watch it towards the end. Yeah, let's do that. So bell ringer for today. Don't want to get copyrighted. Uh-oh. Detail America's stance on the war in Europe at its start in 1914. So reviewing a little bit what we mentioned Wednesday and Thursday of last week. And today we'll dive more into the Lusitania. Bless you. All right, let's get to it here. Let's get to it. So by 1914, was the United States involved in the war? Were you involved, Griffin?
No, we were gonna try to stay out of the war, but still try to.
Perfect. Good job. Good job. So the U.S. Wilson wanted to make sure that the United States could stay out of this conflict as long as possible. Right. The main reason was, well, we weren't prepared for this new style of fighting. And what was the style of fighting like in World War One? What was it called? Gabe, what was it called? Trench warfare. Yeah, good job. Good job. And we talked a little bit about the weapons and that were involved in this war that were just being created to try to break the gridlock. Okay, try to stop this stalemate here in Europe at the time. And with all these new forms of weaponry on the battlefield, the U.S. just really wasn't prepared for this style of fighting. Many military officials knew about this, and some still had no clue, had no idea. But definitely the people, the citizens of the U.S. had no idea what type of warfare was occurring over in Europe at this point. But yeah, there's many different perspectives of the United States citizens towards the war, and I know we mentioned them last week. And what were they again? There's three of them. What was one of them, Eddie? Do you remember? Isolationists. Good job. So many Americans thought there's no point for the U.S. to get involved. Our greatest defenses really are the oceans. The Atlantic Ocean separates us from Europe. So why travel all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to fight this war when it really has nothing to do with us? We're so far separated from it. What was another perspective? Go ahead, Griffin. Interventionists. Good job. Teddy Roosevelt was one big proponent of this. He thought that the U.S. has to get involved over in Europe. If we don't, who knows? This war might travel across the Atlantic, and we might see it in our own country. So we need to make sure and prevent this war from traveling over the Western Hemisphere. We need to get involved. All right, good. And the last one. What was the last one? Tanner, go ahead.
Internationalists.
Yeah, internationalists. Good job. And these internationalists believe that we should stay out of the war. We should see peace, but at the same time, we should profit off of it. Right? We should seek the benefits of selling to both sides of the conflict. So the Central Powers and the Allied powers are making a big portions of money off of it. The U.S. is rising as a world, the strongest industrial and the strongest agricultural society at this point, thanks to this standpoint. But what was the drawback to this? What was the drawback to this perspective? What was it? What was it? Kale? What was the drawback to this? Even though we're making a lot of money off of it, do you think our allies, these other countries around the world respected us? No, not really, right? What's that? Yeah, we're making profit off of it and we're selling to both sides. So in all reality, we're two-faced, right? We want to see an end to it, but at the same time, we want to see this war go on so that we are the only industrial power left in the world. So yeah, a lot of these countries around the world, especially in Europe, had no idea what to think of the US. Okay, we're very hypocritical with our standpoint. And that's the course we took for the majority of the war, right? Leading up until 1915, when the Lusitania sinks, this was one push for the US to get involved. But up until then, we were just fine sitting across the Atlantic and making large sums of money off of this conflict. All right, so I know I talked about U.S. neutrality. That was one of the biggest things. We wanted to stay neutral, stay out of it, but we just saw the profits coming from this conflict. And we'll talk about when we get to World War II. Congress is going to try to make this a lot more difficult for the U.S. in selling these goods and items and supplies to these European countries, because once we did that, well, there's only one route that we're going to go into, and we're going to get involved in the conflict. All right. Good. Terms for today. I have a couple. Too bright for you now.
Yeah.
Blinding you. All right, so we have unrestricted submarine warfare and Lusitania. If we get to the Zimmerman telegram, I might briefly talk about it. I'm not going to really focus heavy on it, but tomorrow I'll focus more on the Zimmerman telegram, which is an interesting push into the war, which was the last straw. Maybe some people think it was falsified now. It was fake. We'll see. All right, unrestricted submarine warfare. What do we got here? Jamie, what do you have? Yeah, good job. Good job. So with Germany, as they're getting involved in this war a little bit more in detail in the Navy, okay, their naval experience, right? Devoting a lot of time and investment into their submarines because they're hard to detect. At this point, Great Britain had no way of seeing where these submarines were located out in the open water. And German U-boats were very effective at eliminating a lot of supplies out in the Atlantic Ocean. And let's face it, what is Great Britain? What is it? Go ahead, Griffin. An island. Yeah, good job. So they're dependent on what coming in to their country? Resources, raw materials. Good job. Good job. So that's why in 1800s, Great Britain expanded so far, right? They're in parts of India, parts of Asia, Africa, right? We already know of 13 colonies. The reason for that is because they're limited to what resources they have. They're a small island. So Germany thought the best way to try to eliminate the Allied powers is really cut off the head of Great Britain by surrounding the island with these U-boats and really just trying to choke it out, right? Try to eliminate any type of resources coming in to feed the people, right? And really with these low supplies, low resources, sooner or later, Great Britain will have to give up if this continues to happen, right? So with unrestricted submarine warfare, these German U-boats were taking out all ships coming in and really out of Great Britain. Okay, most of them being the United States ships too, with passengers on it, which we talked about, which you guys already read with the Lusitania. All right, Lusitania, kind of already know this one. Kara, what do you have? Yeah, yeah, good job. And 128 Americans died on this ship, which was one of the biggest pushes of the United States into the war. All right, so German U-boats, like I mentioned, Great Britain was this island, right? A very small island. limited to what resources and raw materials they have. And we talked about it last chapter, the age of imperialism. Great Britain needed to expand in order to survive. In order to expand its empire and to live, they needed resources coming into the island. So Germany, with these new advanced U-boats and submarines, okay, they utilize them to try to take out any type of ships, okay, any type of supplies and resources coming into Great Britain. And I mean, think about it today with really the supply chain and how low it is. I mean, the prices are jacked up to a point where it's very hard to buy common goods and resources and different types of food at the shopping market. So in this time, especially though, I mean, now you have an enemy just shooting out any type of supply ships coming into Great Britain, into the country. So this was amplified really 10 times, maybe even more than that, obviously. But again, Germany's tactic was to really just try to choke out Great Britain. If they could eliminate their supplies, if they could eliminate any type of resources coming in, sooner or later, they're going to have to drop out, right? And Germany knows if they can push Great Britain out of this war, out of this conflict, well, it's going to be pretty easy to take over France, no problem. Then they can focus their attention on Russia, right? They could easily manage taking out these two powers, I mean, without Great Britain involved. So that was a goal. That was a goal. Try to cut off all the supplies coming into Great Britain. And like I said before, Great Britain had a strong navy, but they had no way of really seeing where these submarines and these U-boats were located deep underwater. That form of technology with radar and different types of, really just seeing and picking out where the submarines are located, that didn't come until towards the end of the war and really up until World War II. So again, it was very difficult for Great Britain to pick out these submarines, these U-boats in the open water. And with unrestricted submarine warfare, like I was saying before, a lot of times these submarines would come up above water and warn the ship, whether it was a passenger ship, to really use lifeboats to evacuate before they were going to sink it, before they're going to destroy it. And we all know with the United States, they might try to disguise some of these cargo ships as passenger ships. And one fact was Lusitania. It actually might have had some war supplies in its hull, and it was just disguising as a passenger ship. So it was very difficult for Germany to realize what was an enemy, right? What was just a passenger ship? What was a cargo ship? As they're just taking out all these ships at once. But try to avoid the United States from getting involved. They eliminated this policy for a short time, which I'll talk about here next slide. So May 7th, 1915, German U-boat sinks Lusitania, which you guys already know about. And with the Lusitania, that was sailing up right towards, it's Liverpool, right in the middle of Great Britain. So they have to pretty much sail right around Ireland, okay? So Ireland is right there, right next to Great Britain. And as the Lusitania was getting sunk, okay, it was really difficult for these passengers to get off board, all right, and try to really get in these lifeboats to sail back to really where Ireland's at, sail to the land. And I know the reading described how foggy it was, right? How difficult it was to see traveling these distances across the Atlantic Ocean as we're getting closer and closer to Great Britain. So again, they tried to, sail in the zigzag, but it just didn't happen because of the fog, because of the dense fog that was really located around the island. And as the U-boat came up, it was pretty easy to sink. So as the Lusitania was sinking, it was 12 miles off the coast of Ireland. And like I said before, 12 miles, I mean, you could probably see the land, but at the same time, it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be really hard to swim that far, right? Especially in the cold temperatures of the water. So unfortunately, yeah, there's a lot of innocent people that died in the sinking of the Lusitania. And weeks after the event, which is interesting to note, weeks after the event, many people that were on Ireland, on the beaches of Ireland, just kind of waiting it out, waiting the war out, they saw dead bodies literally being floated up on top of the beach weeks after the event of the Lusitania sinking. So that's kind of disturbing, right? You're just going out for a walk and all of a sudden you just see bodies washing up upon shore just weeks after really Lusitania sank. It was pretty disturbing. All right, so September 1st, 1915, to try to avoid the U.S. to get involved in the war, Germany knows they're trying to cut off Great Britain. And if they really piss off the United States to get involved, well, this is going to be really difficult for them to win the war then. if the US gets involved on the Allied powers. So they try to send a message out to the United States saying that they are going to avoid any type of conflict and continuing this type of attacks of these passenger ships. And one thing to note too is Great Britain controlled all communication really around the world. Okay, they actually had these transcontinental cables, fibers that really stretched all throughout the Atlantic Ocean, all the way down to Africa, parts of Asia. It was really a lot of money. It cost a lot of resources to try to really have this type of communication at this point in the early 1900s. And really, the only type of messages we were getting about the war in the United States was the viewpoint of Great Britain. So obviously, they're going to depict who as the enemy? Germany, right? So then in March 1916, Germany attacks the Sussex, which was a French passenger ship, again, leading more and more closer towards the United States to getting involved in World War I. That just goes along the lines of that Germany will do anything it can to try to cut off supplies and resources coming to the island. If they can strangle it, if they can really subdue Great Britain, sooner or later they're going to have to drop out. All right, so again, after that sinking of the Sussex, well, Germany tried to avoid the US from getting involved by saying, well, we're done with our unrestricted submarine warfare. But again, it's really hard to communicate at this point out to these submarines that are deep under the water in the Atlantic. There's just no way. And some of these German U-boats were just taking out some of these passenger ships, supply ships, without even notice of these policies being limited. All right, we'll talk about the Zimmerman note tomorrow, but Great Britain intercepted a message from Germany to Mexico to try to get Mexico involved in the war, to try to attack the United States and prevent the US from sending troops and soldiers across the Atlantic. Again, who controls the communication? Great Britain, right? Yeah, so do you think maybe this message was made up? Maybe. A lot of people think so. A lot of people think so, but who knows? Either way, it might have been a good idea from Germany to do this. All right, then finally, April 1917, US declares war on Germany. So this is a long time, right? From 1914 all the way up to 1917, the US stayed out of the war. But after the sinking of Lusitania, US still didn't get involved. And a lot of Americans were upset, especially Teddy Roosevelt, with Woodrow Wilson's decision staying out of the war after 128 innocent people died in the sinking of Lusitania. But finally, with the Zimmerman note, that was the last straw, which we'll talk about tomorrow. All right, so here is Lusitania. Okay, kind of looks like the Titanic, doesn't it? Yeah, it kind of does. And then the Sussex, after it was destroyed by the submarines, it just goes to show the devastation of these submarines, these U-boats. And many people note that the Battle of the Atlantic really is this the most dangerous part of the battlefield. Because if you think about it, yeah, no man's land is obviously you don't want to be caught there, but there are some ways you can try to survive in no man's land. There is ability to find cover out in maybe these trenches and maybe in these really the explosions of these artillery. But out in the open water, is there anywhere to run? No, there isn't. So if you get shot down, if your ship or your vessel gets shot down and you're sinking, there's nowhere to go, especially if you're out in the middle of the ocean. Yeah, you might get a lifeboat, but same thing. Are you going to paddle the distance the Atlantic Ocean? No, you're not. And the water is very freezing cold, constantly cold. So many of these individuals would die, these soldiers, if they were really going across the Atlantic or if they were being sunk or targeted by a submarine. There's nowhere to run. Chances are you're going to die. All right, is there any questions on Lusitania? So you can see how in 1915, Lusitania sank, 128 Americans died. Did the US get involved yet, though? In 1915? No. So you can see the backlash many people have towards Wilson that we weren't getting involved just yet. These 128 American citizens die, and we do not get involved in the war just yet. All right, I want to show you a video on unrestricted submarine warfare, and that'll be it for today.